Good morning, everyone. Fellow commissioners, Chief Choi, Acting Executive Director Django Sibley, Madam Secretary, City Attorney Carlos de la Guerra, and members of the public. Today is Tuesday, September 10, 2024. It is 9:32 a.m. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Please let the record reflect Commissioners Shields, Calancha, and Garcia are present, and we have a quorum, Madam President.
Thank you.
Vice President.
We welcome everyone attending this morning, both in person and online. We want to ensure all members of the public can access our meetings, so if you need any translation services or accommodations, we encourage you to contact the board secretary in advance of our meetings, as explained in our written agenda. These meetings are regular meetings between the board, the department, and key stakeholders. We welcome feedback from the public during the public comment period, which will be heard during item 2 on the agenda. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board. You can speak to any item on the agenda or any matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. We will dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. As explained in the written agenda, each member of the public can have a total of up to 3 minutes to speak if you wish to speak on both agenda items and general public comment. While we welcome public attendance at our meetings, disruptive behavior will not be tolerated and will be cause for removal. You will receive just one warning, and if you continue disrupting the meeting, you will be asked to leave and be removed from the meeting. Before moving to item 1 on the agenda, I want to note that pursuant to Government Code Section 54953, President Suthers has notified us of his need to participate remotely for Just Cause. In this case, Just Cause is a physical disability as defined in Government Code Section 12926. President Suthers will only be participating remotely for the closed session agenda items. President Suthers will join the meeting briefly before we recess into closed session in accordance with Government Code Section 54953. And with that, we'll move to item number 1 on the agenda, the report of the Chief of Police.
Thank you, and good morning, Vice President Shields, Commissioners, Acting Inspector General Yu, City Attorney De La Guerra, and Acting Executive Director Mr. Sibley. Today I'm going to start my comments with an officer-involved shooting. So on September 3rd at approximately 11:43 hours, 77th Street Patrol Division uniform officers responded to a radio call of an assault with a deadly weapon at 5868 Estrella Avenue. The suspect, later identified as Brian Rodriguez, was reported to have vandalized a parked vehicle and pointed a handgun at a residence. As the officers arrived in the area, they observed Rodriguez standing in the street and requested a backup. Rodriguez threw what appeared to be a rock towards the officer's police vehicle and then ran south on Estrella. Moments later, Rodriguez stopped, faced officers, and pointed what they believed to be the handgun in their direction. Rodriguez then ran into a driveway toward the rear of an apartment building at 5912 Gonzalo Avenue. Officers stopped their vehicle in the roadway near the apron of the driveway. They stood behind their doors and ordered Rodriguez to drop the gun. Upon reaching the rear of the apartment complex, Rodriguez faced the officers and again pointed what they believed the handgun at them, resulting in an officer-involved shooting. Rodriguez was not struck by gunfire and was taken into custody without incident later when additional units arrived. He was subsequently transported to 77th Regional Jail, where he was booked for assault with a deadly weapon. No officers or community members were injured during this incident. The object possessed by Rodriguez that was initially believed to be a gun was actually a stun gun. Force Investigation Division investigators responded to the scene and are investigating the incident. So far, year to date, we've had 21 officer-involved shootings in comparison to 23 the same time last year, which accounts for an 8.7% decrease year over year. I also like to talk about our Above and Beyond ceremony that we had. So on September 5th, the Los Angeles Police Foundation hosted the Above and Beyond Award Ceremony, special event honoring officers who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. I had the privilege of presenting these dedicated individuals with the department's highest honors, including the Purple Heart, awarded to officers injured in the line of duty, the Preservation of Life Award, given to officers who demonstrated exceptional tactical skills and sound judgment to save lives during dangerous encounters, and the Medal of Valor, recognizing those who showed extraordinary courage and bravery in the face of imminent danger. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to the Los Angeles Police Foundation for their generosity in hosting this event once again. It was great to see such strong support from our elected officials, our commissioners, thank you for attending, and our community members and department personnel. I also want to highlight some significant arrests, burglary arrests that we've had last week, based on the additional resources that we've sent to these areas and focused on this crime problem. So in the Valley, on September 4th, at approximately 0350 hours, 3 suspects used a Chevy Tahoe to ram the front doors of a business located at 11360 Sherman Way. Once inside, they stole several electronic items and fled in the vehicle. Officers responded to the scene and after reviewing security footage, identified the vehicle involved. They followed up at the home of the vehicle's registered owner and found the car there. Officers stayed at the location while detectives from Van Nuys area secured a search warrant. Before the warrant was served, a suspect, later identified as Pedro Firos, got into the vehicle and drove away. Officers stopped the car, detained Firos, and took him into custody, and then to Van Nuys Station for further investigation. During the investigation, detectives linked the vehicle to 4 additional burglaries, one on the August 21st, 22nd, as well as September 3rd and 4th. The suspects used the vehicle to steal ATMs and other property from businesses from the Van Nuys and North Hollywood areas by using chains to pull open doors and chaining ATMs to the car and removing them. Firos admitted to the crimes but refused to name his accomplices or reveal where the stolen property was taken. Detectives are continuing their investigation to identify the other suspects and recover the stolen items. This arrest highlights the dedicated work of our officers and detectives who are tackling a recent rise in burglaries across the valley, and I'm proud of our commitment to solving these crimes and reducing property theft in the area. Another significant arrest from West Los Angeles. On September 4th, at approximately 1445 hours, victims were inside their home along Butterfield Road when they heard glass breaking from the side window. When they went to check, they saw 4 suspects trying to break into their house. Upon being spotted, the suspects fled in a black SUV. One of the victims managed to take a photo of the vehicle's license plate. Thanks to the increased patrols in the areas, officers arrived quickly, and after the call was broadcast, a night watch detective issued a warrant for the vehicle. At approximately 1640 hours, officers from the West LA division spotted the SUV matching this description from the crime broadcast on Berry Avenue. After confirming the license plate, officers began to follow the vehicle, which led to a pursuit. The suspects abandoned the vehicle and fled on foot. 2 suspects were captured immediately. The other 2 suspects were caught shortly after with the help from our canine units. All 4 suspects were detained and taken to West LA Station. During the investigation, officers responded to 2 other burglary calls. After reviewing security footage, they confirmed that the same suspects in custody were involved in these burglaries as well. The search of the suspect's vehicle uncovered designer handbags, a box of jewelry. The victims were contacted and their stolen property was returned after being photographed. The driver of the SUV, identified as Jonathan Lopez, was arrested for felony evading, and the other 3 suspects, identified as Keelan Edison, Kai Campbell, and Austin Grimes, each were booked for attempted residential burglary with persons present and violent felony enhancements. This is another great example of effective police work as we continue to focus on those committing burglaries. I'm proud of the teamwork and dedication shown in addressing the rise in burglaries in the West LA area. Okay, now before I go into our crime stats for the week, I just want to revisit some prior presentations and what the crime stats represent that you'll be hearing today. So 2 weeks ago, the department reinstated the public crime data on our website, and now we have data crime profiles and also year-to-date data for 2022, 23, and 24. The 2024 year-to-date crime totals, although they provide valuable insight into crime trends, direct comparisons to previous years should be made with caution due to the change in reporting standards. Just for clarification, in 2022 and 2023, we used exclusively the summary reporting system which only recorded the most severe offense. In 2024, we shifted that method to blending our summary reporting and our national incident-based reporting, where each offense in an incident is counted separately. An example is this, or to clarify, is consider an armed robbery where a suspect takes money from the victim and points a weapon at somebody else in the store. Under the summary reporting, only the robbery was recorded. Under our NIBRS or National Incident-Based Reporting, both the robbery and the ADW or aggravated assault is recorded. So 2 crimes are recorded. Since March, so the first part of 2024, we use summary reporting, and then the second part of 2024 now, we're using incident-based reporting. So the year-to-date totals for 2024 are blended summary and NIBRS reporting. But since March of 2024, the crime data presented here at the Board of Police Commissioners has been based on victim counts, which is, to complicate things further, it's another method of reporting through the National Incident-Based Reporting. But this was the only method available with our new RMS system to report crime. But now we moved on to the second phase of crime reporting, where each offense per incident is counted regardless of the number of victims. For example, you'll see a few weeks ago when I reported on robberies, year-to-date robberies, we were up 20%, 20.4% for the week ending August 17th. However, in this week's report, it shows an 8.7% decrease when comparing current 4 weeks versus the prior 4 weeks. So not only is the time period that we're reporting slightly different, the year-over-year reporting is not going to happen in this meeting. And so that's just an example of why you're going to see differences. And I think it's important that the commission and the public understands these differences and understands why the numbers appear to be so different, to understand the underlying reasons of how we're reporting. So we're going to be reporting 4-week time periods as opposed to year-over-year. But these 4-week comparisons, they offer more timely and more meaningful insider data into crime trends and the effectiveness of our strategies. What they're really doing is we're discussing what our current crime trends are, whether they're going up and down and where they're located. And I think that data is more meaningful, ensuring our strategies are accurate in addressing these crimes. So to start, for the 4-week period ending August 11th through September 7th, 2024, compared to the prior 4-week period, the combined persons and property crimes, this is the same thing as our violent crimes and property crimes, where persons crimes and our property crimes are down 11.7%, or minus 1,158 crimes. Our persons crimes, which were previously reported as our violent crimes, are down 5.5%, or minus 123 crimes. Our property crimes are down 12.1%, or minus 908 crimes. Moving on to our homicides, compared to 2023, so I'll give you this caveat. Our homicides and our victims shot are hand counted, and they're by the number of victims to ensure that we're absolutely accurate in these numbers. So compared to 2023, the city has seen a year-to-date decrease of 5.5%, or minus 12 in our homicides. Compared to 2022, the city has seen a decrease of 27.9%, or minus 80 homicides. Our victim shot, citywide, our victim shot is down 97, or minus 11.7%, compared to 2023, and down 261 victims shot, or minus 26.4%, compared to 2022. For the past 4 weeks ending September 7th, 2024, there's been a decrease of 25.8%, or minus 24 victims shot, compared to the prior 4 weeks. For aggravated assaults for the past 4 weeks ending September 7th, aggravated assaults are down 3.1%, or minus 44 incidents, compared to the prior 4 weeks ending August 10th. Similarly, compared to the 4-week period prior to that, ending July 13th, aggravated assaults are down 9.6%, or minus 144 incidents. Looking at our robberies for the past 4 weeks ending September 7th, robberies are down 8.7%, or 61 incidents compared to the prior 4 weeks. ending August 10th. Compared to the 4 weeks before that, ending July 13th, robberies are down 6.7% or minus 46 incidents. Looking at our burglaries for the past 4 weeks, burglaries are down 7.6% or minus 76 burglaries compared to the prior 4 weeks. And compared to the 4 weeks prior to that, ending July 13th, burglaries are down 11% or minus 114. For the past 4 weeks, for residential burglaries, they're down 6.1% or minus 38. And for the 4 weeks prior to that, Then moving on to commercial burglaries, for the past 4 weeks, they're down 10%
Chief
or
Choi,
minus 30.
please hold for just, ladies and gentlemen in the gallery, if you want to have a conversation, please take it outside. Thank you, Chief Choi.
Okay, so for the past 4 weeks, for commercial burglaries, they're down 10% or minus 38 compared to the prior 4 weeks. Motor vehicle thefts, for the past 4 weeks, motor vehicle thefts are down 4.3% or minus 81 compared to the prior 4 weeks. And however, compared to the 4 weeks prior to that, motor vehicle thefts are down 8% or minus 154. The profile of the vehicles that are being stolen still remain consistent with Kias, Chevys, and Hyundais, but we've seen a significant drop in the Kias and Hyundais as far as vehicles stolen, and with still an increase in the Chevy Silverados. Our personnel strength is, for sworn, is at 8780, our civilian staffing is at 2604, and our reserve officers remain at 380. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Chief. We'll go to the commissioners for questions. Commissioner Kalanche, do you have any questions?
Thank you. Just clarification. So the new reporting system would technically, would technically report more crime because we're counting, one victim could have multiple crimes. So are we, just for clarification?
Well,
I'm trying to
yes and no. It's more, depending on the type of crime or the type of incident, you can have more through summary reporting. For example, our robberies, every victim would be counted as a robbery.
Okay.
But in our NIBRS reporting, we would have, let's say, let's say somebody's in a convenience store, one person gets robbed, and then under summary, we'd have the store as a victim, and then we'd have the physical person as a victim. So that's 2 victims for 1 robbery. Under NIBRS, you'd only have 1 robbery reported.
Oh, okay.
But for homicides, every victim, if it's one incident of a shooting, but there's 5 homicide victims, all 5 victims. So it's a little more complex than.
Interesting. Okay. So then eventually, so right now we're starting the new system, so it's like month-to-month comparison, but at some point we'll be able to do annual.
So after we get a full year of data for NIBRS reporting, then we can start comparing apples to apples year over year. That'll be a little after midpoint of 2025. But right now, comparing year over year is really apples and oranges. So we can give you the raw numbers, but to say if it's up or down compared to year over year is not an accurate analysis.
Okay, so we'll continue the month-to-month.
For now, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
Follow up on the same topic. So in a case where there's an incident and there's 2 folks and they experience a different type of crime with the same person, does that get counted as separate? So one person gets robbed and the other person gets punched and robbed?
Yes, so right now we're reporting NIBRS offense base, so each offense will be reported, yes.
All right, thank you.
And thank you, Chief, for the report. One comment about kind of the recent burglary arrests. I think it's interesting to see that the people arrested have a track record of conducting several other robberies. So hopefully that will make a dent in future robberies. And also, I don't know of anything that will make people feel less safe than having someone break into their home. is when they are there. So it's good to know, good for the community to know that the department is actively investigating these and actually turning in results of finding people. And also want to, commend one of the victims who acted quickly and actually took a photo of the license plate, which also goes towards the education of the community, that if you could do so safely, these are all, be a good witness. That this can all help our communities feel safer. So thank you for that the resources that are being provided, and also the results that we're seeing from those resources. And thank you for the report on the Above and Beyond awards. I think when the approvals came to the board, we just got a written report, and it was really impressive to see that in video, and also see what the officers were actually dealing with for those who received the Purple Heart Preservation of Life Awards and Medal of Valor. I think a lot of times the department complains that the media doesn't talk about the good things that the department does very often, but I think the department can do so more as well. And so I would like to see in future commission meetings, maybe in a couple of weeks, have one or two presentations from the Above and Beyond ceremony, so that all of the commissioners can see what some of us saw, and also that the community gets to see it as well. So if we can get those scheduled, that would be great.
Absolutely, I think that would be great.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, we will now turn to item 2 on the agenda, public comment. Madam Secretary, please call on the first speaker.
The first speaker is Hassan Tran.
My name is Hassan Tran. I want everybody to know I'm here today, and also can you put my name in government system and let them know I'm here. Thank you.
The next speaker is caller ending 1264.
Hello.
Hi, what items would you like to speak on?
All items, please. Chief Choi and commissioners, our police department has really failed us here in Pacoima Foothill Division. We have a situation of drug dealing that has gone out of control, illegal everything on our sidewalks, in our parks, have gone out of control. We have a person by the name of Demon who is involved who was just arrested for burning a lady and dumping her body in Bakersfield. He is from Pacoima, but he was arrested in San Fernando. Does that make any sense? No, it doesn't. I mean, we have our police department that is celebrating these drug traffickers by allowing them to have a festival on Mercer Street blocked off for 2 days straight. And they say, oh, that's permitted. That is not permitted. So we continue to get lies from your department, yet no relief for the residents and the taxpayers of this city. And we're becoming a failed department, a lawless department, and that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Next speaker, Love Jamie Cusick.
Good morning.
And Madam
Sir,
Secretary, for
sir-
the future, can we try to verify people's names? Or,
Yep.
Mr. City Attorney?
you are not allowed to use anyone else's name.
I said love, Jamie.
It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
I didn't use other people's name.
You cannot.
It's different. And then you never informed me this rule before, so how do I know
You're
that?
informed now. Okay.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, please have a seat. We will make sure that doesn't happen in the future.
Telling me to sit down? Are you kidding me?
Mr. Reedy,
That's not his name. What are we doing here?
Ms. Cusack, can you please have a seat?
Why? You called my name. If this piece of shit wants to put my name down,
You're
then
cor-
why don't you get to speak?
You're correct, except we didn't know he submitted the card. It just had your name.
What?
So he should submit a card with his name.
Have
and
him
now she
submit a
gets to
card
speak.
with his own name and let me talk.
You will get a chance to speak. Your card is in here too.
What?
All right, okay, please hold. Everyone, please have a seat. Sir, please have, if you would like to make a comment today, please submit an actual card. We'll move on to the next speaker.
And then is this because of the Brown Act? Because I never
Sir?
know. You said it will verify everyone's ID. Because based on my knowledge about the Brown Act, how can you verify everyone's ID?
I'm not trying to verify everyone's ID, but you cannot use the name of someone else that is
Which is
present.
I did not. It is clearly 4-letter difference. Which is I did
Sir,
not.
you
Just
can
fill
have
out
a seat.
another card. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to talk about all items. I'd like to address closed session item A3 about Oscar Pedamonte's use of a carotid restraint control hold on Jesse Batten. Jesse Batten was in the midst of a mental health crisis and ideating suicide, and allegedly, according to the LA Fire Department, attempting suicide when LAFD called LAPD for assistance in taking him to the hospital. And of course, the way that LAPD offered assistance was by forcibly restraining Batten and handcuffing him to a hospital gurney. In the body camera footage, one of the officers says, "We're just trying to get you safely to the hospital." And Batten says, "And yet you have these fucking officers." Very good point. And then this fucker Pedamonte says, this is not a joke. He says, "We're your homies, and we're actually very cool." This is while he's looming over Batten, who, by the way, is surrounded by an army of firefighters and fully armed cops who are all laughing at him. At which point Batten attempts to defend himself from this assault on his body by trying to slap at Pedamonte's hand and trying to spit in his direction. Pedamonte proceeds to lunge at him and start strangling him, which he does for a full 3 seconds. Despite the fact that Batten, just to remind you, is unarmed, he's wearing a fucking t-shirt, he's sitting down in the gurney, and he's being restrained by both arms by 2 other different officers, and another officer has a taser out and pointed at his chest. This is such an unnecessary and so obviously out of pocket course of action that you can actually hear the fellow pieces of shit of Pedamonte saying, "Don't do that and get your hands off of him." Pedamonte angrily throws a sheet at Batten's face, and then the officers put a spit hood on him, which is what they should have done according to LAPD policy. By the way, spit hoods should be fucking illegal. They're designed to constrict people's breathing. They have directly caused death by hypoxia in countless incidences, and they obviously exacerbate any physical or mental crisis anyone's going through. When he reached the hospital, Batten was arrested and booked for battery on a police officer. Are you fucking kidding me? This guy was suicidal, got harassed, got assaulted, and he gets booked for battery. By the way, Pedamonte in February of last year, so months before this incident, deliberately hit someone with his car in an attempt to disarm them after they had already been hit with a stun gun and a projectile launcher. Even fired Chief Moore admitted that that was out of policy to use your department-issued SUV as an assault weapon.
Next speaker, thank you.
Next, we have Audit LA.
Yes, good morning. I want to speak on all agenda items, including public comment.
Okay, 3
Um,
minutes.
Thank you. I want to discuss the permit situations, the special event permits and Scientology and why, and it correlates to all the donations that you're getting today. And I'm going to ask that you refuse them. I was promised before by Chief Choi that donations to LAPD does not warrant favor. And I think real life tells us differently. Okay, they have been getting permit after permit from June 1st all the way through October, plus special permits to fix the road and sidewalk simultaneously. Okay, and at the time in June, in May, the this one officer was given, I have absolute proof, he was given the full permit, which stated that pedestrians are not prohibited, only vehicles to the special event permit after through the street on L. Ron Hubbard Way. But he prevented me from going through there. I was absolutely prevented. Everyone else was too. And that was, but he knew what the actual permit said. So don't, and conveniently prior to that, Scientology is given like a $20,000 donation. Okay, and now with the league, who knows how much more they're giving because now they don't have to report who gives what. So you cannot say there's not a correlation between giving a donation and then gaining favor. Okay, this officer actually had the permit, which stated clearly pedestrians were allowed, but it was enforced the way Scientology wanted it enforced. Was it what that the officer was negligent and didn't read the actual permit that he had? Maybe, but that's not any more comforting. Okay, he's the supervisor on that shift that day for the extra, watching whatever they do, their overtime gigs. He should have known. And so we're tired of it. We're tired of these backhand donations, which is, some could say money laundering, but it's also buying favor. And nobody can convince me otherwise. You don't think the people of police, the PALs don't get favor? You don't think the people that are supportive of these leagues don't get favor? I think it's ludicrous to say otherwise. So, I stop these donations. Stop it. You get over half the budget. You get a lot of support. You don't need these donations. And I also want to say that all the officers that are being reprimanded, it should be done publicly. When you go to court for the people, the citizens, it's done publicly. They get publicly shamed, whatever. They get to be watched their court cases. So why aren't we allowed to see the proceedings of officers that have done wrong? We want to know who and what is doing what, who and what. Okay, and that's
The next speaker is Margarita Carranza.
Hold on a second. My name is Margarita Carranza, and I am a victim of identification fraud. I have had two attorneys, Tigran Martinian and Susanna Ibrahimian. Also involved, City Attorney Mike Fewer, City Attorney Ronald Whitaker. In conspiracy, these attorneys, my attorneys would have been for Martinian and Associates, stole my identification via telephone. I had a serious fall on Los Angeles City property in Sylmar, California, August of 2018. These attorneys, I called Susanna Ibrahimian to represent me over the phone. She was a reference to me by a VIP, and I gave her all my personal information. I never heard from her again until 2021. I was angry. I did not care for what she was doing because I didn't communicate with her. City of Los Angeles gave me 4 depositions, each one being 6 to 8 hours on my city fall that replaced me, a knee in full and several back surgeries, etc. I cannot carry the entire medical that I have
because I would need a cart full in 3 years that these attorneys settled with Mike Fewer authorizing $14 million for my permanent injury as I'm still waiting. I've got a second knee replacement scheduled. I am pleading, Chief Choi, your Detective Ward from Van Nuys Police Station has this ID robbery, and she fails to see why she should investigate. If this is over her head, I am pleading with everyone here. I have notified the city attorney, Heidi Faustin Soto. I got no results. I have notified the California State Bar. These guys are criminal law specialists. Of course they're defending their theft. This is $14 million robbed 2022 without my knowledge. These guys are presenting 2 checks issued from 2 different defendants for $25,000. That's their legal fees. And they in turn kept my multi-million dollars award for my body's permanent damages on account of Los Angeles City property being as damaged as it was for my injury. It is unfair not to have this investigated.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Next, we have Betty Lay.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
I'd like to do public comment to the chief and to agenda items.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Well, first off, I'd like to add the Above and Beyond Awards ceremony is absolutely amazing. Anybody that can go should. I think it's great. On the agenda items, I support all the donations because I know where a lot of it goes to. And Chief, good luck on your closed session. But I hope you have given the Board of Rights recommendations regarding the outcome of officers' future, their years of service. And with that said, do the right thing and recommend that the captain and the lieutenant in question keep their jobs. I want to be impressed with you again. I would rather be a part of your retirement celebration instead of you leaving, as I would be ashamed. Sorry. I yield the rest of my time.
The next speaker is Mr. Herman.
And before we move on, please put down a sign. We already know that there are no signs allowed within this area, but you are up for speaking if you are interested.
Please. Do I got the floor, Madam President? Oh, Great. The Vice President who cannot tolerate First Amendment speech, right? Am I right? Did you know that Mr. Soboroff was involved in some issue in the LA Times and you protected that rat that was a criminal in development projects in UCLA? Did you know that? Did you know what David O. Carter, for the record, said to Los Angeles and to the veterans people out there? He said, fuck you. We need housing for veterans now. Simplify, fucking faggots. You're going to hell. God hates you as much as maybe I do. But I can forgive because God is in me. God is in my head. And this bitch ain't going back to Florida. And this bitch ain't going back anywhere other than to speak on behalf of what people need. Veterans need housing now. And David O. Carter should let the world know how fucked up California is, and the Attorney General needs to investigate this commission and the criminals of those developers that you entangle with. Just like yourself, Madam Vice President. All those donations from the oil refinery people makes you happy, huh? Doesn't make me happy. It doesn't provide me a goddamn happiness. I'm very upset. How you can get up here and lie about crime when you yourselves are criminals like Los Angeles Jose Luis Huizar, that juju idiot, moron, stupid, and as Trump put it, stupid Englander who did his 6 months in Arizona federal prison, which maybe soon, those indictments might come to you soon with all those kickbacks from the oil refineries. But again, it may not be criminal now, but it did become criminal activity in Los Angeles. You're the hub, you're the insult, you are the embarrassment to what America should be like. And you fucked it up for us all us Americans. Watch the debate tonight and see how that dumb bitch tries to point out that Trump, yes, Trump.
I think you're off topic.
No,
Get to something
I'm
that's
talking
within the
about
department.
criminal shit. The same criminal shit Mr. Choi was talking about, all these burglaries, all these robberies, all these criminal activities in Los Angeles, and not one goddamn thing happens but a week or two later. The same way that happened to that actor that got fucking killed by a Cadillac converter thief. Thank you, damn it.
Next, we have caller in 1.
Sorry.
Caller 1, you're on. Okay, we'll move on to the next.
The next speaker is Megan.
Ooh, it's another week where it's difficult to know where to start. Today, a motion goes in front of the City Council Public Safety Committee. It's vaguely worded. It bans speech and public demonstrations near community and public facilities, regardless of whether those community and public facilities are themselves being used for political purposes, effectively banning protest in large areas of Los Angeles. This language would make it criminal to picket your workplace and give police expanded authority to
Again,
quash.
can you please hold for 1 second, Madam Secretary? Please hold the time. Sir, you've already been warned about your sign, and you can leave. You've already had an opportunity to speak. If you will not comply with the board's rules, you must leave. Sorry about that. Thank you, Megan.
Not that the LAPD has needed any kind of special authority up until now to quash labor strikes. We've watched LAPD assault striking workers over and over again. I wanted to highlight one in particular that I didn't know about in 1990 when the Local 399 of the Service Employees International Union held a Justice for Janitors nonviolent march and labor rally and were brutally beaten by LAPD at the gateway to Century City, arresting 40 people, and dozens suffered injuries ranging from broken bones to bruises and hospitalizing a pregnant woman. LAPD later said they preemptively broke up the demonstration because of a rumor that traffic would be disrupted. Can't let those rich folks get too annoyed, can we? These janitors were predominantly immigrant, female, and Latino, and that's who gets their asses beat at protests, isn't it? I don't recall LAPD arresting and beating people at the SAG protests last year, but there were a lot of whites at those. Scorn for workers and human life in general is a cultural value here at the LAPD, where the leader of your union is currently being investigated for swindling his workers out of their wages. Wage theft being the most profitable form of theft in the United States, $15 billion annually. The total value of property stolen through robberies, burglaries, and carjacking is about $500 million a year. But let's keep talking about those fucking house burglaries, right? It's like week after week, you can't stop talking about it. So a story broke in the LA Times this week about how the LA PPL director and literal neo-Nazi, Jamie McBride, has been grifting off of his employees of his Watermark security company, employees who include, surprise, surprise, lots of former LAPD officers, many of whom were dismissed for misconduct, including using excessive force. And that's really saying something when you get dismissed from the LAPD for using excessive force or misconduct. You really, really got to do some depraved shit to do that. The roster of Watermark employees includes, a cop who shared nude photos of a fellow cop who was also his wife. And a cop who raped 2 women while he was on duty in the 1990s. That's who's guarding you at the Walgreens and the Target. And again, I just want to lift up and really thank Stop LAPD Spying, People, City Council, and Black Lives Matter for actually providing education and accountability as to your despicable practices. Thanks.
Next, we have Jay. Jay, you're on.
Items.
Hello?
Dear Chief Troy, Team Police Commissioners, we are here to confront the disgraceful actions of the Los Angeles Police Protective League, LAPPL. Corruption and intimidation tactics are undermining this department and our public trust. Commander Lillian Carraza, LAPD veteran, has been unjustly targeted by LAPPL President Craig Lally for defending a fellow command officer. Lally falsely accused her of fraudulently accessing LAPPL's electronic platform despite the fact that the LAPPL gave her and other commanding officers access. Craig Lally has been a problem officer for decades, named in the Christopher Commission report as one of the top 40 problem officers. 40 years later, Lally still sits in power. Why hasn't he retired? What kind of financial benefits is he clinging to? How much is he making off the backs of his members, taking advantage of their dues money while undermining the officers he's supposed to be representing? LAPPL attorney Larry Hanna takes a lot about the Christopher Commission, but you won't hear him mention that Lally was named in that very report. Supervisor Damien McBride, another LAPPL director, is comfortably on the Union Legal Committee despite accused of multiple labor violations and evading taxes through his private security business. The LA Times reported that McBride has been involved in overbilling, falsifying officer credentials, employing security guards with replica firearms to fraudulently bill for higher pay. Yet he remains in power, using his position to expand his business empire while exploiting employees. Even worse, McBride, along with directors like Joretta Sandos, Thomas, Christopher Weckler, continued to slander command officers while turning a blind eye to the rampant misconduct within their own ranks. This is not leadership, it's hypocrisy. But let's not forget LAPPL Director James Zorek, who disgustingly remarked, I haven't seen the Democrats this mad since we freed their slaves. This kind of rhetoric is unacceptable, yet Zorek continues to draw a biweekly paycheck while contributing nothing to solving the LAPPL's internal corruption. These mob-like antics from Lally, McBride, and their allies must end. Actions are not just unprofessional, they're criminal. They harass and defeat command officers, undermine the integrity of this department. Chief Choi, commissioners, it's time to clean house. The public deserves better. Drama must end and accountability must begin. Thank you.
The next speaker is Jason Reedy.
LAPD threatened to arrest journalist Lexis Oliver Ray on August 28, 29, and September 5th, 3 times in 9 days if anyone's counting, for documenting the city's violence against our unhoused community. Now, various pigs on the scene kept citing 5611, but coincidentally, not a single pig on the scene could spell out what part of that ordinance Lexis was violating. Now, Pigs on the Ground said that this went all the way up to Dominic, so little Nicky. Where in 5611 does it say that journalists can't be in a work zone? Would you like to answer that question? No? Yes? Why won't you answer that simple question? Why won't your pigs on the ground answer that simple question? Now, again, Lexus was on the sidewalk, out of the zone, out of the way, doing his job, and your pig saw him as a threat, and he's a threat because he's a black man who has often exposed you. Now, threatening journalists with arrest isn't new to the LAPD. In fact, you arrest journalists. We remember Echo Park. I mean, John Peltz and Kate Gallagher are suing the department over that, aren't they? And we certainly haven't forgotten how Lexus was beaten and arrested in October 2020 while covering the Dodgers World Series win. He was the only person you charged with charges that night. The only person you targeted with charges that night. Now, speaking of lawsuits, the city paid out $22.8 million just in the month of July for LAPD-related settlements. In the last week of August, the city council approved $44.1 million in settlements related to LAPD violence and abuse. And we know that you'll have to settle for arresting many of us during the first week of the George Floyd uprising, where LAPD used excessive force against protesters. You arrested us without probable cause, and you restricted our First Amendment rights. Now, NYPD paid out $13 million to protesters for their brutality in 2020, which was the largest class action settlement for protest-related cases. And we know LAPD is going to break that record once this settlement comes through. Now, if you want to talk about money, LAPD spent $122 million over your sworn labor-adopted budget for the last year, despite your sworn personnel dropping by 204 pigs. You lie and always say you don't have enough resources, but you hide the true cost of this department, just like you hide your true harm. Now, we know that LAPD isn't complying with AB 481. In fact, the city controller showed that you were hiding your weapons of war, including gas tactical pocket grenades, sting grenades, and your 40mm rounds. All that so when it comes time to use these weapons against the public that you claim to protect, you can get away with more harm with less consequences. And it seems like the only people in this equation that ever have to face serious consequences as a result of your actions are the people that you abuse and criminalize. And finally, I want to touch on one of your rank and file, Megan already mentioned him, the neo-Nazi LAPPL director and LAPD pig, Jamie McBride, who likes to employ sexual offenders. Any comment on McBride hiring one of your former pigs who was convicted of raping 2 women? Or how about hiring that creep Ricardo Lamas? Again, this is Jamie McBride, who your pigs elected to represent them time and time again. He's who your pigs aspire to be, a multimillionaire Daryl Gates wannabe who can do as he pleases. And in one of his re-election speeches, Jamie's told rank and file, a vote for me is true.
Thank you. Next speaker.
The next speaker. Hamid Khan.
There's a couple of items on the agenda, and it's always interesting trying to do almost a quiz for the commission because we know about the level of ignorance that they have. So there we go again about there's this item for accepting a grant for Los Angeles Regional Threat Assessment Center program. Now, how many people have heard of the fusion centers? Right. Just a few of people, and I don't know how many of people over here have heard about the Joint Regional Intelligence Center. So this money is going to go to pay for overtime and the cops that are assigned to the Fusion Center. Here's the kicker, that the Fusion Center is at the center of, it's also a mega spy center. So now a U.S. Senate subcommittee, it was just after about the Fusion Center had been in existence for about 8-9 years, back in the early 2010s, they released a report, and these were 2 senators, U.S. senators, who looked over that audit of the Fusion Center. And at that time, they revealed that intelligence, and I'm quoting directly from the U.S. Senate report because I spoke to the principal investigator, Justin Rood, at the U.S. Senate. And it says that it revealed that intelligence gathering at Fusion Centers was useless, flawed, irrelevant, inappropriate, unrelated to terrorism, outdated, and potential violation of Privacy Act protections. So now, this is the Fusion Center where all our information is uploaded. This is the place where they have major information sharing environment. That's why we call it the stalker state. But of course, this continues. It reminds me of the fight that we are having against the suspicious activity reporting program, that how that reporting has gone from 2,600 to 22 a year. But they still insist on doing that because there's money. There's money. Which reminds me of another thing that they're doing with USC. And it is called, this is again the fucking pseudoscience that we see about everyday respect, by taking 1,000 body camera videos and then trying to teach LAPD officers how to be respectful. LAPD has been around since 1869. And they constantly are speaking about building trust in the community. How can you program somebody's mind that has been around for 156 years to start respecting people now. But USC apparently has the answer. And it reminds me of the same pseudoscience that we saw with Jeff Brantham and Andrea Bertozzi and all of these professors of UCLA that gave us Predpol. Same pseudoscience that gave us, and because the academic complicity, the academy has been deep in its complicity from eugenics to everything else. This is another eugenicist approach into how are we going to teach respect, to be respectful superficially to black people, to poor people, to unhoused people, and this has been going on for so long. So this is where our money is going, and I bet you.
Thank you. Next
Next, we
speaker.
have Steve Riley.
Good morning. All items on public comment, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Yes, the phrase building trust is often used. The best way to do that is to do your job in a professional manner, in a timely manner, with a sense of concern for the public. Now, I will bring up, like I brought up before, the very conspicuous and complained of transient encampment on First Street between Spring and Broadway. I know it's been complained of by others because when I called 311, I was told that there were numerous complaints. And yet nothing was done. And you know the location. It's right outside police headquarters. Take a walk outside. See if it's still there. Look outside from City Hall. I'm talking to the mayor's office now and City Council. Now, after numerous complaints, I was there at the intersection of First and Hill. And I'm wondering if because of a concert, a multi-day concert, it was removed. You see, you only care when certain people speak, whether it's the donor class, whether it's corporations, people that you perceive to have power, your key stakeholders. What about the people? What about the right of the person to walk on north side of First Street, to be able just to walk to that bus stop or to walk to Grand Park? Don't those people have rights? And this is just one location, the most conspicuous location that you could find right outside of City Hall and police headquarters. This condition goes on throughout the city. And now the mayor is saying that the transient issue, the homeless encampments, is actually decreasing. That is not true. Look for yourself. Get out there and see locations. I've mentioned them in the past. So the George Orwell quote, the party, what party are we talking about? There's only one party in this city. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. So get out there and see things for yourself. Now, regarding the statistics, crime, thank you, Chief Choi, for the report. Great thing about above and beyond. Congratulations to all those officers. We appreciate the daily work of the good officers. However, it says not available. When you go on to look at the statistics, I don't know if you know that, Chief Choi, it says not available. Please, if that could get corrected. The events section on the website, lapdonline.org, still has no events. Are there no events taking place tomorrow to commemorate September 11th, the loss of all those people, public safety and citizens? There's so much that needs to be fixed in the LAPD that it's hard to know where to begin sometimes. But on a positive note, we love the LAPD. It is Suicide Prevention Month. All the officers should know, the public, the vast majority, love and support you. Know that. Not the radicals that you want to use racism and class warfare. The people. The people love you. God bless the LAPD.
The next speaker, Matios Kudai.
All items, please. My name is Matias with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. I also wanted to talk about this supplemental funding from the Department of Homeland Security for the JRIC, the Joint Regional Intelligence Center, the Fusion Center. And as Hamid laid out, this is kind of a data hub, an information sharing hub with interagency collaboration. And, that's not kind of a secret. It's just not something that LAPD talks about very visibly, the fact that they participate in an interagency kind of data hub in this way. But it does kind of counter other narratives, right? Other kind of fictitious personas that the LAPD kind of puts on, and I'm using that for a reason. And I want to harken back to when Trump first got elected, right? And there was some pretty explicit racism around immigration policies and how the LAPD really performatively kind of said that they wouldn't share information with DHS, right? And I also want to harken back to the craze around sanctuary cities, that somehow liberal cities were protecting undocumented immigrants in some way. Well, the existence of this Joint Regional Intelligence Center kind of counters that narrative, right? You have here a hub that federal agencies have access to, that the LAPD actively pumps information into. That's not at all limited to what they pick and choose. That includes field information cards filled out on street vendors who are likely undocumented, and DHS has access to this information. And so the whole notion of LA being a sanctuary city, of the department not sharing information with DHS or ICE, is just that, it's a fiction. I also want to uplift, what are these fusion centers used for? And I think we can look at the LAPD's proposal to the Department of Homeland Security for the Targeted Violence and Terrorism Prevention Grant, listing Alex Vargas, who was the head of the Joint Regional Intelligence Center, as the head of this program, as kind of evidence of what this department is used for. And one of the things praised in that application was Alex Vargas's overseeing of the Joint Regional Intelligence Center during the George Floyd and Breonna Taylor uprisings. So that's evidence that this fusion center was in some way participating in information gathering during what we saw and other people mention was the violent quashing of dissent of primarily Black and brown protesters and journalists. Last thing I want to talk about is this Everyday Respect project and the utilization of AI to analyze body-worn video footage to assess the language of cops to see how it differs. Now, I don't think we need AI to analyze the footage of Alexander Mitchell getting punched in the face, and I don't think we need academics, primarily white academics who are clearly participating in a masturbatory academic exercise, to quantify or academically substantiate what we know to be true, what we see in that video, which is the racialized violence that is the reality of LAPD, and that is their function. So just to say, this is stupid, right? This is dumb. This is things that people know and experience in real life, but it's also very harmful in that it's legitimizing the LAPD. It's legitimizing this violence, and it's using an academic institution to do so. This white academic probably, isn't thinking about any of that. Probably isn't thinking about how this is sanitizing and perpetuating violence. It is okay because it's.
Thank you. Next speaker.
The next speaker is Jonathan Foster.
Hello, good morning. Jonathan Foster. 210.46, duty of officers to report misconduct. So I want to say something. There was the officer that punched the black suspect in the jaw, and I said, was he sleep deprived? And I didn't mean the suspect. I meant the officer. Was the officer sleep deprived and couldn't control his emotions? And there's no commissioner here, so there's not 5. That's corrupt. That's got to be filled. And you were talking about taking pictures and stuff. Well, when we take pictures of the police and the corruption and no one listens, there's been a lot of money paid out. The LA Sheriff's Department is paying out $5.2 million for executing someone. And Steve Cooley on Sunday Morning News Makers 870 KRLA, he said these police situations, they don't need a machine gun. They just need a trained officer. And in the Graham versus O'Connor Supreme Court decision, 1989, it rests on a reasonable officer. Anybody going to tell me what a reasonable officer is? So I talked about the Latino racism like Gascon and Nori Martinez and all this kind of stuff. But I wanted to say, all Latinos aren't racist. That's not what I meant. What I meant, like when a mob of Latinos beat up an Asian guy, that's racism. So when 4 gang members, 18 Florencia gang, take the catalytic converters, they've hurt a lot of people and they killed Johnny Wagner, right? So what I wanted to talk about for just a minute and 30 seconds is there's a 17-year-old girl. She made $409,000 using Amazon. And these 4 could have done the same thing, and they could have split $400,000 and made $100,000 each. Why didn't they? And there's a lot of 17-year-olds making $1,000 a week or teens making $1,000 a month. They were stealing catalytic converters. You can only get $15 to $200 for them, right? This is disgusting. And they're blind. So it's really shameful to think that there's this type of community in Los Angeles, and all it does is donuts in the intersection. It kills people and steals catalytic converters, and that's all we can get out of it. Are you serious? That's all we're getting is death from this community. Bunch of sick, racist people. So there was a 12 with 7 seconds. There was a 12-year-old boy. He became a lawyer, and his 11-year-old sister became.
Thank you. Your time's up.
Next, we have Mona M.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes, what items would you like to speak on?
All items.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Thank you for your time this morning. Two things I'd like to discuss today. First, there was a brush fire on L. Ron Hubbard Way on August 21st. I've been weekly, every meeting, consistently complaining to the Board of Public Works about the fire lane in the EMS, the emergency service blockage on that road, since the continual permit closures from June 1st. It's been a continual problem. All the neighbors are complaining about it. The fire was reported to LAPD as a possible arson, and I'm glad that it was extinguished quickly, but it certainly emphasizes the need for that fire lane to be kept open. I know a ladder truck didn't get down there with the north and the south closure. Second, there are 2 donations, one for 20,000 and one for 5,000, being donated from the LAPD Foundation. I know it's a 501c3 corporation, but the public has the right to know if this instrument is being used to bypass lobbying rules. We need to make donations transparent. Thank you, and I yield back my time.
The next speaker is Susan Price.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. In nanoseconds, algorithmic dataset models with invasive input-output technology gather all metadata on any target. The data is processed and clickbait returned to the subject, and the subject is tracked. Database hacking and unauthorized crypto-viral extortion and invasions of privacy, ransomware, access to data breaches happen so often that cyber crimes are no longer notable. The LAPD gets a budget about $3 billion annually and growing every year. The burden of that budget causes budget shortfalls in other agencies. What we need to do is not funnel more money into interdiction and incarceration. And what we need is we need more social services and public housing. That would cure a lot of your problems. You know, just give us some public housing. And also, all of this military cyber warfare materials that you guys are gathering, what are you guys getting ready for? Civil War 2? Come on. Let's get into these social problems we have. Not more interdiction, more incarceration, more death and destruction. Let's make this city better. Thank you.
The next speaker, Love Sammy Ray.
My name is Love Sami Ray. My name is Love Michael Moore. My name is Love Kevin De Leon. My name is Love Israeli. My name is Love Donald Trump. Today, I would like to talk about the LAPD chain of command. So seems like all of a sudden, Russia Shield, deal with law-abiding citizens is much tougher than she was dealing with violent criminals. That's very interesting, but I like it. You're getting tough. Maybe I'm just being too peaceful, like I always said. 3 weeks ago, when the commission was dealing with a person was interrupting the meeting, when I watched the video, I also was here witnessing the whole situation. I heard the commissioner said 4 times, Sergeant at Arms, please remove that gentleman from the room. So the way I understand that meaning, that sentence is that is a direct order. However, what I see, the sergeant at arms, the detective, the lieutenant, nobody is doing anything. So it seems like as a commissioner, Russia Shield is not that tough. It seems like as a commissioner, the officers doesn't really care about her order other than me. I'm the only one who is complying with her order. I am a little bit confused about this is because when I'm going to the LAPD orientation, when I'm speaking with the LAPD recruiter, my LAPD mentor actually taught me that discipline, chain of command is actually the key. It is something that I have to follow. If my sergeant, if my senior officer, if my sergeant, lieutenant say something, I have to do it. You look, listen, learn, do it. That is what I learned, the most important lesson from the LAPD orientation. However, in this board of commission room, when the police commissioner are saying, Sergeant at Arms, please remove that gentleman from the room, then I understand every single LAPD officer can completely ignore that chain of command. So it seems like LAPD officer, we don't have to listen to the chief. We don't listen to the inspector general. We don't listen to the executive director. We don't care. So when you keep saying remove that gentleman, we're just gonna sit there, stand there, pretend nothing has happened. So the question is, where is LAPD discipline? Where is LAPD chain of command? That's the part I'm the way I also understand in the field. If I am disobeying my sergeant, I will be reprimanded, suspended, possibly getting a personnel investigation, maybe getting fired or whatever. But right here, Russia Shield and all the police commissioner, when they are saying remove that gentleman, seems like nobody has to follow anything. There's no discipline and
Next speaker.
The next speaker is Salam Alam.
It says to protect and serve. Oh, sorry. To protect and serve. We really highly expect you to protect us from criminals. The criminals are not only within yourself, but also elected officials. It's very unfortunate you are allowing this injustice to go on for too long. Why don't you clean up your house? Why don't you hire an independent investigator like the one I knew, the outstanding chief? He hired outstanding investigator. He investigated the entire department. He cleaned up and then he retired. Why don't you do that? You have a serious problem. Address it. 77 division is corrupted. Are you going to come to the meeting on Thursday? Please do. You guys have serious issue. And then another thing, it says acting inspector general. What's her name? We need her name. Yeah, you don't have, and then hiding identity. People hide their identity for a reason. When they know they're not doing their job right. You know, the boogeyman is coming. It's serious this time. If we don't work together with other law enforcement agencies and then with the citizens, you have to gain our trust. We have to work together. The country is going down the hill. Are we going to allow the criminals take over down to us? No, we shouldn't. We shouldn't. So let's stand up, work together. But you know what? Those corrupted officers within the department, if you don't want to serve, this is not the line of your work for you. Resign immediately. Nobody has to investigate you. The outstanding officers cannot do their job because of you. The department is corrupted, not only law enforcement, LAPD, the sheriff also. You guys need to work together. We need to defeat the enemy. United, we defeat the enemy. 80 to 85% inmates are who? Very sad. They're mentally ill. They don't belong there. They don't. We need to make a room for criminals. Criminals shouldn't take over like this and destroy the city. No, they shouldn't. Injustice somewhere is injustice everywhere. That's what Dr. King said, isn't it? Thank you.
Okay, we have already exceeded our public comment by about 8 minutes, but we will take the 2 more people on Zoom and then conclude public comment.
Next, we have Philip Tabby.
Good morning, all items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
I'd like to point everybody to citywatchla.com. Scroll down to the 8th story. It's regarding new LAPD chief, an open letter to Mayor Bass. If you read the letter, you go down, it does request for the reader to copy and paste this letter on Mayor Bass's social media. So again, go to citywatchla.com. We need a chief with experience. We have a chance right now to hire a chief that actually speaks Spanish. Don't hire Arcos at all. Anybody with the brain will be against hiring somebody from Gascon's office. So if you hire him, there's going to be many more upset Angelinos than there are now. We need a chief that will boost morale. We need officers, all the officers want an outside chief. It was written in the Times. So don't hire anybody that was former LAPD or current LAPD. We need to work on boosting our personnel strength. I think we have 10,000 we could hire, but we're only at 8,800 people or so. And we need to hire qualified individuals. I'm hearing that the new hires coming from the academy are just horrible. The public is quite aware that LAPD has lowered their hiring standards. Talk with the patrol sergeants if you don't believe me. I hear that the new hires are just a disaster. We need a new chief. We need a new police commission because this commission is a disaster as well. And speaking of the police commission, I'd like to know what happened to the meetings that were supposed to be held in all 4 of the divisions. You held one in South Bureau, you held one in Valley Bureau, but the year is almost over. Are you going to hold any more commission meetings in the community like the community had requested? We are the boss. We are the boss. And we need an executive director. This commission just seems to get smaller and smaller. I guess others is not here. I wonder why. But the real question is who's running the show? Who's running the LAPD? Because a lot of us have no idea. We don't see any leadership right now. I'm sorry, we don't. Choi is just a manager. He's doing a good job as a manager, but we need a leader. We need a chief right away. By the way, fire Liz Rhodes and move loose hands Marco Lozano from Foothill. He's a disaster also. God bless our officers and God bless the LAPD. I yield the rest of my time.
Okay. Next, we have caller ending 9553.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
Hi, can you hear me? This is for all topics.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Good morning, police commissioners. I believe we need a chief with experience that can lead our LAPD. With major sporting events coming to our city in the next few years, such as the World Cup, Olympics, and Super Bowl, we need a chief with experience to get us through these events, which will highlight the readiness of our city to the world. We also have very serious issues impacting LAPD, such as recruitment and internal conflicts, resulting in very low morale. We need a chief with experience and the knowledge to boost morale and increase the recruitment of good quality personnel. A chief with fresh ideas, but also a working knowledge of the LAPD. The lack of leadership and diversity within said leadership is devastating to this department. Thank you for extending your time for my comment.
Okay, that will conclude the public comments section. We're moving on to item 3 on the agenda. Do any of the commissioners have any questions about items 3A through 3F? I move that we approve items 3A through 3F and take the recommended board action. Is there a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, those pass. And we'll move on to item 4, the regular agenda items. And can we, who's doing the department's report for 4C? Is that person here? Can we take that one out of order, please, if that's okay? We'll do that one first, if that's okay. Can we? So we will hear item 4C first, the department's report relative to the report on efforts to monitor and combat forced labor. Please
ma'am.
introduce yourself and present.
Good morning, board. As of today, we do not have any documented incident regarding forced labor currently, nor were we aware of those. The last one that we had was 2016. It was documented in the crime report. As of now, our human trafficking task force.
Please. Can you identify yourself for the
Oh,
record?
I'm sorry, ma'am. Captain Edward Sun,
Thank you.
currently the acting commanding officer for DSPD.
Thank you.
Currently, we have 2 dedicated human trafficking task force, one in Operation Valley Bureau, one in Operation South Bureau. These task force consists of sergeants, detectives, and officers. They're responsible for human trafficking within the bureau, within their respective bureau, also for training other geographical vice personnel. Now, their responsibility includes rescue juveniles and adults, sex workers, identify, arrest, prosecute traffickers, and they are in collaboration with the city and other federal partners, such as the AUSA, DA's office, City Attorney's Office, FBI, DHS, and DCFS. We are also working with non-governmental organizations to assist the victims with legal counsels and also housing. Now, currently, we are scheduled trainings for geographic vice areas regarding the human trafficking task forces with best practice, our most current policy and procedures, and also case laws. With that set in place, I believe that any future labor issues, forced labor issues, human trafficking, indentured servitude will be best served, and we're able to process those effectively.
Thank you. Let me start with Commissioner Garcia. Do you have any questions?
No question.
Commissioner Calanche?
Yes, thank you. So I know it's difficult to have victims or potential victims come forward. Is there any other mechanisms that we could utilize to make it easier? I know we partner with a lot of different agencies. I know it's happening.
Absolutely, ma'am.
Yeah.
We rely on the non-government organizations. They are more suited to deal with the victims on a more personable level instead of the law enforcement. And also under Penal Code Section 236.2 PC, that every investigator regarding human trafficking task force got to do the due diligence to investigate everything thoroughly and properly to identify the traffickers and the situation that they're in. So those are the things that we have set in place to encourage the victims to report those incidents so we can investigate it from a law enforcement point of view.
So potentially a victim could speak to the nonprofit agency and divulge information, but if they don't press charges, is that what you're saying? Then the LAPD cannot investigate it, or?
Ma'am, we cannot force victims to
Right.
say things that they don't want to say. However, with a non-government organization, they could develop a better rapport with them. And so through that channel, we can better solicit more information out of them. And for that, then we can use that information to move forward with law enforcement process.
But does the victim have to officially press charges or anything like that?
Yes, ma'am. Because without them, we cannot move forward. We do not have a victim.
You can't investigate.
We can
If
investigate.
if I can just clarify this.
Yeah,
So I want to just clarify your question. The victim needs to cooperate and provide information to us. The prosecuting entity will actually file the charges against them, and we'll pursue that. I think it's these human trafficking task forces in the Valley and South Bureau, the primary effort here is to rescue these victims. Historically or traditionally, we looked at this as, prostitution, it's a crime, let's enforce our way out of this, and that, we know that doesn't work. So we're partnering with multi-agencies, whether it's federal, local, and then non-government organizations, to rescue victims, prosecute these traffickers when we have the information to do so, and use the best prosecutorial tools that we have, federal or local, state. But again, this is victim-centric, and so victims don't fall back into the trap. And a lot of these victims are juveniles, just so we all know. So they don't fall back into the only thing that I won't say only thing that they know how to do, but the only thing that is presented to them. We need to stabilize these victims once they're rescued. And that's why we're working with the NGOs and other entities in the government to somehow remove them from this environment, stabilize them where they can start another life. And that's really this collaborative effort here.
Because we've had like wonderful presentations from like our partners. Just wondering, with these partnerships, does it require for us to investigate certain, perpetrators? Could we do that through these partnerships, or does it take the victim having to like fully cooperate?
The victim has.
I know it's complicated.
It is very complicated, but the victim, they do have to cooperate in order to move forward with the process. But our main goal is to rescue these victims.
Right.
And just to give an example, in South Bureau, year to date, we have rescued 84 juveniles and 6 adults.
Sorry, how many?
84 juveniles and 6 adults. So the program is it's working.
Okay, it's just concerning that we're not, pursuing any investigations. But I'm glad that these victims are being.
We are pursuing investigations. I think we've had over 60
Okay, so
year
then
to
what
date,
are
over
we not
60
doing? 'Cause-
human trafficking and pimping arrests. So
And Chief, I think Commissioner Kalanche is pointing to one line in the report that says the department currently has no active forced labor investigations. However, this does not mean it is not occurring. So I think it's the forced labor investigations versus human trafficking more generally that Commissioner Kalanche is pointing to.
So, yes. So what is it that we're not investigating? Just for clarity.
Well, we are investigating all sorts of human trafficking, which including forced labor, indentured servitudes,
Right.
and also adult sex trafficking. However, if we do not have a crime report or the victims are not willing to prosecute or come forward, that means we don't have a certain crime for us to investigate. However, we do investigate those crimes.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
A couple of things from the report that I noted. One is one of the reasons that you say that it might be that some of the sex crimes being investigated may have started off as like forced labor and then turned into kind of like the other area of human trafficking, with sex crimes. Is there a way to document, or have we been keeping track of victims who have been victimized in multiple ways, not only forced labor but also sex trafficking?
Well, those will be documented in the investigative reports. As we debrief the victims and the suspect, they'll be documented on the 314, which is the follow-up investigations.
Okay.
And those reports are forwarded to DSVD. We have a city vice coordinator, who will keep all those reports and review those.
And one thing to kind of echo Commissioner Kalanche's notes at the beginning was just that we understand how difficult it is for some victims to come forward. And one of those reasons is sometimes of their undocumented status within the country. And we had a terrific presentation a couple of weeks ago by the Inspector General's office regarding the T and U visas that are available to victims of human trafficking. I see in the report that you kind of mention it as part of a fact, but I would recommend and I would move to adopt this report with the amendment that this report also include some of the recommendations that came out of the TNU visa report from the Inspector General's office. I believe there's a coordinator that also presented with us, and I'm blanking on her name. But one of the recommendations that came out of that, so what the department was working on is providing like brochures and more kind of information to victims and have that readily available at every station so that they know that they have this option available, which may encourage more people to come forward and actually report crimes. Can I ask the Acting Inspector General, Florence Yu, do you have any specific comments about what some of those recommendations were from your report, or generally?
I don't have all the recommendations memorized. However, some of the recommendations include having brochures and flyers out in public in the languages as identified in the Mayor's Directive, I believe Mayor's Directive 23 from Mayor Garcetti. Others include additional training for the U-Visa, T-Visa coordinator, and perhaps more trainings department-wide instructing officers about the availability of this visa to better prosecute some of these crimes.
So before this report goes to City Council, I would like it noted of what the T visa and U visa coordinator is already doing to try to tell all of the other officers who are investigating these types of crimes of this opportunity to apply to help lower that barrier for victims. And then on top of that, some of the additional recommendations that have been approved by the Board of Police Commissioners in connection with that report that the department should be doing even more to educate the public. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. We will move forward with those recommendations.
Thank you so much. So with, anyone have any other questions or follow-up questions? Okay, so with that amendment, as I've kind of articulated, I would move that we accept and adopt the recommendations for board action for this item. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, that passes. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you, Board.
Okay, and now moving on to agenda item 4A. And thank you for holding for just a minute. And this is the verbal presentation relative to the USC Everyday Respect Project presented by Dr. Benjamin Graham. Can you both please make your appearances?
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. I'm Commander Shufatelli from the Office of Constitutional Policing, and as Vice President Shields said, this is Dr. Benjamin Graham from the University of Southern California. As you recall, late last year, the department entered into a service contract with USC to engage in a collaborative research project with USC and their research partners. It's a 3-year multi-phase project, and the ultimate goal, and I'll let Dr. Graham get into that a little bit more, but the ultimate goal is to have a machine learning tool that has received human input, do an assessment on a large body of body-worn video interactions between our officers and community members in traffic stop settings. The ultimate goal is to assess the communication during those stops and to see what is good communication, what is bad communication, how that impacts the ultimate end of that stop, and how that also impacts community sentiment. As we rolled out and to follow up, obviously our goal is to incorporate any findings from this research into training, particularly traffic stop tactics, communication, and procedural justice. So I've been consulting with training division in the early phases to see where we can best, when we get these lessons, best incorporate them. Early in the project, we signed the contract late last year. We began early this year. There were a few challenges the team faced, including the RMS rollout. The team has forged ahead through those challenges, is working diligently on a daily basis and making progress on the project. Dr. Graham will be presenting periodic updates to you on where we're at in the project during each one of the phases. And that's what we are here for today. We're available for questions afterwards. I don't want to take any more of his time. So Dr. Benjamin Graham, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me here. And I do want to sort of start with a note of appreciation for all the different parts of LAPD who have had to work really hard to enable this project to go forward, that even the process of matching stop data to the body-worn video recordings of those stops is not straightforward, right? And so, and with the RMS rollout going on, everybody's short-staffed, and so we've drawn on a lot of help from a lot of folks, all the way down to personnel division, getting all of our annotators background checked and cleared and that sort of thing. So it's been a heavy lift along, but we have 15 people a day in a conference room on the 10th floor in a secure room annotating these videos and starting to make progress. The basic motivation here on this project, right, is LAPD records thousands of hours of body-worn camera footage every day. And it goes up into the cloud and it sits there. And if something tragic happens, individual videos get reviewed, right? But in general, across all of that footage, we're not learning from it in any kind of systematic way. And so, you know, let's see. Thank you. So the mandate coming to my team is sort of figuring out a way to learn from body-worn camera footage of traffic stops in a systematic way, right? How do we do this at scale? And that is going to require developing machine learning tools so that we can not just have human beings looking at these, but have a tool that can do this at scale and recognize patterns across thousands of stops. We can do the next. So when we're building AI tools in this space, right, this is a challenging area to work in. And the first thing we've set out to do, and what I'll be presenting some results from today, is work to talk to a lot of different stakeholders around LA about what does a good traffic stop look like? What does a bad traffic stop look like? Make sure that we're measuring the right things in these stops so that we can measure the things that matter, not just to our officers following training and complying with policy. That's important, but also all of these other dimensions. And we need to build machine learning models that reflect diverse perspectives, right? The way these models get built, you have human beings watch videos and record detailed information about them and their perceptions of what happened. And we need the folks who are actually working as annotators on this project to reflect a lot of different viewpoints, because the same people are going to watch a recording of a stop and perceive what happened quite differently. And so the annotators that are upstairs right now working, we have retired officers, we have folks who have been arrested a handful of times, right? We have folks who are young, who are old, from different races, ages, genders, neighborhoods around LA, working as annotators on this project, trying to bring as many perspectives into this modeling as we can. And we need to conduct this whole project in a way that preserves privacy, right? That protects the identity of the individuals involved in the stop, the officers conducting the stop, that we want to extract patterns in what's happening in these stops while protecting the privacy of the individuals involved. And so that's pretty central to how this is designed. And the models that we're building, the tools that we're building, you know, we're not a for-profit enterprise coming in here, right? We're academics who believe in open science. The machine learning tools that we build are open source models. Actually, the custom annotation software that we built in order to even do this project is already publicly released. And we presented that at a conference this summer. And we're already talking with other teams in other jurisdictions about using that software to annotate videos from other departments and sort of build forward in a cumulative open science way. Project like this takes a whole lot of different folks with different expertise. So we have electrical engineers and computer scientists who sort of develop these really high-end machine learning models that can watch a kid speak on video for a few minutes and diagnose whether they have autism, that are sort of these models that are integrating tone of voice and pace of speech and the actual words that are being said and sort of stitching all of the video and audio and text information together. We have political scientists, we have sociologists and policing experts, we have public policy folks, even public health folks, trying to really think about how to build and deploy these models to create and apply the knowledge that we learn, right? LAPD is pretty unique in being willing to collaborate in a project like this and bring in outside academics to access data. And so we really want to create a model of kind of how to do this right. So the way this project goes forth, like we started with, and I'll be presenting results from this idea of what is good communication in a traffic stop context? What do different stakeholders want to have happen and not happen in these interactions? This is when we were just scaling up on the annotation. We've got about double this many people working each day now. But this is the annotation room on the 10th floor where we have people sitting there, headphones on, watching videos, annotating data, right? This is how the models get trained. So each one of these 1,000 videos gets watched by probably about 6 people before I run out of money for annotation. And so we've got multiple different annotators, and we don't expect that they agree on everything that they see, right? We take all of those thousands of annotations that they generate, and we use it to train machine learning models that then can essentially reproduce that coding process on its own, right? So they take what the human beings have done and the model learns to predict what a human being is going to say about each stop, and then they're generating the model output. And we'll use that to study the videos from 29,000 more stops. And then I'll be coming back here, right? I'll be coming back here to present results. I'll be working with Commander Chief Fratelli, with Training Division, with other parts of LAPD to sort of implement what we've done and to learn from what we've done. We'll be presenting out in the community to different NGOs and other stakeholders in the community. We'll writing peer-reviewed papers and presenting to our colleagues the way we do as academics. So there'll be a lot of different outputs coming from this analysis on the back end. But really a big focus here, and we're seeking more funding from National Institute of Justice and others to sort of really fund this back end of the work, but working in a lot of partnership with different pieces of LAPD to implement this into training, policy, and practice. As academics, we're also, I'm talking, actually later today, I'll talk to a team in Rhode Island that's doing sort of a parallel project. So we're networked to other academic groups trying to build tools in the space, trying to do this analysis, and we're contributing sort of a national academic conversation on how to do this sort of analysis right. On the good communication piece, right, we spent a lot of time reading policy documents, we attended trainings, we met with Training Bureau, we've held workshops with both sort of community organizations related to policing, but also with patrol and traffic officers, like sitting down in a room with us for several hours at LAPD talking with us about their perspective on good and bad communication during stops, and a lot of survey and interview research around different communities in LA. And that's the piece that I'll give you a little bit from today, some of those results. In the national conversation around policing, we talk a lot about really important divergences across communities by race, by class, and other factors in how people perceive the police and how people experience traffic stops and other interactions with the police. One aspect that I do want to highlight is there are also areas of striking similarity, right? So we did in-depth interviews with about 50 individuals, but we did 2 rounds of a representative sample of 1,000 folks each round in LA. So this is drawing on 2,000 survey responses and about 50 in-depth interviews and 4 different sort of 3-hour-long workshop focus groups. We've got a lot of community input here, and there's a lot of similarity in what people want and don't want to have happen during stops. That as much as people diverge a lot in when we ask people on the survey, were you stopped in the, did you experience a traffic stop in the last 6 months? And then if so, we ask them a lot of questions about how that went. That varies a lot by race, by class in terms of what people report. And when we ask them, what frequently happens when people in your community are stopped, so what they expect to happen the next time they're stopped, there's a lot of variation by race, by class, by education level in those expectations, but a lot of similarity in what folks want. One of the big takeaways that comes into what we're measuring and what we'll be focusing on in our analysis is the role that fear and anxiety play, right? Where there are communities in LA that experience a lot of fear and anxiety in that moment between when they pull over and when that officer walks up to the vehicle. When we're looking at, when we give people kind of an open response window and have them talk to us about what are some of the words and some of the actions that go well when a traffic stop's going well, what are some of the words, some of the actions when traffic stops are going poorly, tone of voice and respectfulness of the tone come across as probably the most important. So it's sort of like calm versus aggressive and respectful versus disrespectful are the things that probably pop up the most. We also hear a lot of stuff in these interactions that are, or in these responses that are very consistent with the procedural justice training that I would say is kind of the core of, if you look at training and policy at LAPD for traffic stops, procedural justice is kind of the backbone of what that is. And that's actually pretty well reflected in what people want, but they often want it for sort of different reasons a little bit, where some of, and so we'll get to that with a couple of pull quotes toward the end. So this is sort of some of these differences in what people are remembering and expecting. So non-white respondents, considerably more fearful, sort of perceived threat from policing practices and community. You know, we asked a number of these questions sort of several different ways, but across ways we ask them and sort of in terms of fears and experiences, we see variation by race, by class, by education level that you would expect. So even things like, do the police in general, not just for me, but in general treat people fairly? The more formal education you have, the more likely you are to say that the police in general treat people fairly. So there's a lot of, you know, sort of the trust in police, police legitimacy stuff. There's a lot of the patterns that we would expect. But for the stuff we're pulling really actively into our research, there is this anxiety piece, right? There's a lag when you get pulled over. They're sitting in the car behind you, so you don't know what's going on. There's just, I don't know what he's doing. I don't know what he's thinking. I don't know what's coming. I don't know how he's coming, right? That's what people are sitting there before anything's happened. All they've done is been pulled over for speeding. But that anxiety, and that's going to shape then how that interaction with the officer unfolds. And so, so that's really central to what we're thinking about. But people are talking about some of these procedural justice elements. Some of these things we train officers on are showing up in what people say. Thank you for pulling over. My name's so-and-so. This is why I pulled you over. I think that'd be appropriate for sure, because it does. It makes it more personable, human. It makes it more of a human interaction. You also have people talking about just kind of like understanding that they're reassured that somebody's sort of following a script and a profession, you know, sort of when it's that I'm officer so-and-so, this is why I pulled you over, that's very reassuring to folks. The most important thing for anyone being pulled over would be the reason, you know, like that transfer of information, establishing legitimacy and an actual real professional, just sort of knowing that you're in a rule-bound professional interaction kind of drops that anxiety. And that is consistent with how officers are currently being trained, but it's stuff that's showing up when we kind of, when we ask people what's important to them and why. So all of this first stage research, it filters into what are we measuring, right? Because there's thousands of items we can measure and ask about what happens in a given stop. We're capturing 73 different actions by the officer of things they say and do. And so some of this is the procedural justice checklist. Some of this is investigative questioning. Some of this are sort of stop outcomes around searches, contraband seizure, arrest, and that sort of thing. But we're measuring both sides of these interactions. So we're looking at 46 different actions taken by the driver. And some of this draws on things that we hear from officers that make them really nervous, right? And, you know, so trying to pick up, are those things happening during the stop or not, and at what stages of the stop? And then we're not just doing things that are objective here. We're spending actually a lot of time having human beings annotate subjective things where we think our annotators are likely to disagree. At the beginning of the stop, the middle of the stop, the end of the stop, we're asking people about empathy, warmth, fear, anger, offensiveness, right? And so two different people are going to say, oh, you know, the officer was interrupting the driver there. And somebody's like, no, that wasn't interrupting, that was providing information, right? So those simple things like, was this an interruption or not an interruption? We expect our annotators to disagree when we're trying to build these sort of rich multi-perspective models. So that's what our annotators are doing right now. And when I come back to you guys later, it will be the annotations are done. We've actually analyzed the patterns in the stops and sort of what's happening in different communities with officers from different backgrounds, patrol officers versus traffic officers versus gang enforcement officers, pulling over people with different identities in different neighborhoods. How are those interactions going? And at a really fine-grained level, escalation and de-escalation, right? Because escalation isn't just, is there use of force at the end of the stop? It's, does everybody start out really angry and it ends really calm? Or are people starting out calm and it ends really angry, right? Like there's a whole lot of more micro-level escalation and de-escalation that happens that isn't picked up just in the stop data that we have now. So hopefully we can provide a lot of insight to you all and to the department on how that's going. So thank you very much for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions folks have.
Very interesting. Thank you. Let's start with Commissioner Kalanche. Do you have any questions?
Sure. Wow, this is great. I can't wait to see the model developed and then used to see if there's any things we can learn from the different types of stops. So I have a couple of questions. So we're talking about just traffic stops.
Just traffic stops, that's correct. We're sort of narrowed and focused.
Okay. So traffic stops by any officer, it doesn't matter what unit they're assigned to, or, yeah, so just traffic stops, okay. And I guess you kind of addressed it, so my follow-up was what officers are thinking, and then how we're using that to inform the model, and then also, are we looking at how we're training officers? Like, so does the training deviate from like the implementation of like how they're addressing folks when they get stopped? And also, I know I'm asking a bunch of questions about like the model, but, and then also like, does the training, so here's the training, here's what we expect. Does the implementation change over time? So I'm expecting that like you're fully, graduating from the academy, everything's like super new. You might be implementing, like, does that change? Or does it not change? Or does it, like, you get better at it? So those are the kinds of things that I hope we would expect to find information on. So I don't know if those are questions or, yeah, but anyways,
Yeah,
those
we
are
are,
the
we are,
thoughts that
Commissioner, and
came
I
to
could
mind.
jump in that
Yeah.
we are, at each phase, I mean, right now, we don't have really any actionable data that I can take back to training division. But we are looking at two things that I think you hit upon, which is what we can glean from this project and how we can incorporate it into our communications training at training division. And two, looking at how our officers' development with their training and their development as officers. So we are, I mean, everything is hashed and everything is anonymous. I mean, officers are identified by an anonymous number that doesn't reference back to their real ID numbers, but we are looking at some of their demographics, how much time they have on the job, how much training they have had, so that we can kind of ascertain whether, hypothetically, are some of our younger officers having more of these volatile stops, or are they then later learning at the mid-phase in their career how to communicate a little better. Those things will be parsed out at the end of the project.
And the project is a 3-year project?
Yeah, so I'm hoping we'll have fairly significant results to bring to you in about a year. And then my guess is that when I come to you with a pretty significant round of results, that's going to raise questions as well as answer them.
Yeah.
And then we'll keep cranking away to answer the new questions that get raised.
Well, no, this is great. I look forward to seeing like even your first run of the data. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. So, question on, you talk about how we're capturing the variations in experience based on the community's differences or profiles. Do we measure or capture anything on the officer's side of experience? So officers who are more educated perceive a stop, such as officers that are non-white perceive a stop, such as, similar to what was presented in terms of the community's potential experiences, difference, or opinions?
That's a smart question. So our our surveying of officers was not as broad as our surveying of the community, right? And so we've done sort of in-depth focus groups with officers, but I would not say that gives me a broad sense of sort of like LAPD officers in general. How do they vary in this way? So that I would say we looked more deeply and broadly at community perspectives than officer perspectives here.
Mm-hmm. Would it be possible?
It is definitely possible. I mean, it requires, I think, permission from the department to survey their employees and some of this stuff, but it's very doable. So that's something I'm absolutely happy to explore.
And some of I don't know whether I misunderstood the question, sir, but I mean, the demographic data and the training data and some of the demographic data as it pertains to our officers that are involved in these interactions is being accounted for in the project.
Absolutely. No, it's as far as surveying officer perspectives on what constitutes a good or a bad stop, I don't have broad data there. I would say I have deep interviews, but I don't have like sort of across 500 officers, what do folks think kind of results.
Yeah, I'd be curious to understand that if possible, because that potentially when it comes time to the training portion of it, there are potentially different strategies and approaches for different pools of officers. possibly, right? Again, based on some of those race, education level, and other factors.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Would we be able to later get a list of the actions that are considered? So the 73 actions for the officers and the 46 actions from the community members?
Sure. No, I'd be happy to. I can share the full code book of, of everything we're doing.
Thank you. And then lastly, and this is, I don't know if there's an answer to this, and maybe this is just deep AI stuff, but how do we sort of translate what folks are able to articulate in vocabulary and what folks are feeling in terms of levels of anxiety or levels of perception based off of a deeper experience that they're not necessarily clearly able to articulate. And so potentially in like a human interaction, you could pick up on body language and tone of voice and a bunch of other things. Is AI capable of that? And what are we doing to support AI or how do we as the human portion of this translate that into the AI system to better capture some of those nuances of an interaction?
Yeah, I would say we're right at the frontier of what AI is capable of right now, and that changes every 3 to 6 months. Well, probably faster than that, right? So there was some of this when we were writing National Science Foundation proposals a year ago, and I'm talking to the engineers on my team and saying, okay, like help me have a little more concrete detail on exactly what models we're going to be running over these annotations once they have it. And they're like, we're going to be running those models a year from now. What do you mean exactly what models? Like the models we'll be running a year from now don't exist now. This is a very fast moving field. So what these models are capable of keeps changing. I will say that working with body worn camera footage is very challenging. If you can picture, a lot of the cutting edge models are trained on like footage from IMDb. So you've got like zoom in close on an actor's face while they emote the heck out of something, right? And we can try to do emotion detection on that. Now you've got body-worn camera footage that's bouncing all over the place and the face is in the frame and out of the frame, and we're trying to figure out from body language, like sort of what's going on in as far as the fear sort of state of that driver in the moment. That's, I would say, sort of at a high degree of granularity, probably outside of what the models are capable of now, but we're going to capture high-quality human assessments of that. So the human being watching that driver sitting in the seat and hearing their tone of voice and assessing how fearful are they. And the model capabilities keep advancing. And so, by 2 years from now when this project is wrapping up, models will be capable of a lot of things that they aren't capable of now. So we'll essentially see how far we can push the envelope there. The lab we have working on this, the Signal Analysis and Interpretation Lab, is literally the best lab in the world doing this work. And so, I think we'll push it pretty far.
All right. And last question, are we leaning on other folks who are engaged or have engaged in a similar sort of project, and not necessarily other law enforcement entities, but can include that, but even looking at just corporate research projects on customer service and using something like this to then implement training?
Yeah, so I'd say that's something academics do pretty well is we network together on different teams working on analogous problems. And so I and other members of our team are in pretty frequent meetings with groups around the country that are working to solve either very closely or kind of like analogous problems to what we're working on. So we're trying to draw as broadly as we can in an open science way of building high quality tools.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And I think Commissioner Garcia stole many of my questions. And I too would love to see kind of like the 73 actions taken by the officer and the 46 actions taken by the driver, particularly, and I do like this idea that Commissioner Garcia was mentioning about trying to get a better understanding of just as there is anxiety on the driver's side, there's anxiety on the officer's side, and what causes that anxiety? What are things that are likely to put them in higher alert than others? Is it tinted windows? Is it like things like that, that to the extent that level sets the interaction from the outset, or can be addressed from the outset. That would be wonderful to get a sense of it. And, I'm glad to hear that you've taken a lot of care in really trying to understand the inputs going in, because with AI, like garbage in, garbage out.
Yep.
And so, in particularly, one of the biggest criticisms of AI is kind of the uh, tendency to have potentially discriminatory results if the input is flawed. And so, and I understand that you're taking a pretty big demographic and diverse demographic and trying to put all of that in, and understanding that there's going to be disagreements. How do we account for that? Like, so say it's like 50% of the population never get pulled over and they see things one way, the other percent see it a different way, and those are the people that are more likely to actually be pulled over. How do you factor all of that in so that it's not just a wash? Like, well, they saw it as bad, they saw it as good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a hard question. I'm going to do two things. One is there's a early part you said about sort of picking up the factors that put officers on edge and right, or make officers perceive a stop as more or less dangerous as they're approaching the vehicle. And one thing I just want to highlight that definitely came out of conversations with officers is that within what's captured on the body worn, we will see some of those factors and we will not see others. That the person watching the body worn camera footage does not have all the information that the officer has when they approach the vehicle. And so sometimes an officer will be approaching what they perceive to be a very dangerous stop, but the reasons why it is potentially very dangerous are not at all apparent in the body worn camera footage. So some of what's going on when we assess, did the officer behave appropriately or not? That is often not something you can really know from the footage, right? So I do want to sort of make a note of humility there on sort of what is even present in the body worn. But then, oh shoot, I'm sorry, I dropped the second half now.
The second one is just trying to, if there's a difference in opinion, how does
Right.
that get factored in?
And I think that is, so we are probably the first team to try to do multi-perspective annotation on something like this, right? So the Morality and Language Lab at USC does hate speech detection on Twitter, right? Like it's one of those domains where two people read the same tweet and one person says that's political speech, that's hate speech. And they, so if you look at the best papers out there on subjective natural language processing, which is what this field is called, a lot of them come out of that lab. So we have high-end folks in the field working on this. But some of this is we don't know what folks are going to agree about and disagree about. It might be that our retired officers and our young men of color are actually perceiving a lot of these things very, very similarly. And then when they do perceive them differently, sort of as you say, what do we do about that? Sometimes is going to be like, well, actually, we don't really know what sort of the magical ground truth is. We're kind of not imagining there is a single ground truth. The best we may be able to do in some cases is be like, that's a circumstance where people are going to disagree about how respectful or how calm that part of the interaction was. Hopefully we can get beyond that in certain cases, but we're going to have to see how far we can push the envelope there.
Yeah, because the one thing I would see as potentially, that I'd like to make sure that it's not being missed is that there are, microaggressions or other things that maybe one person doesn't realize, but it actually does exist, and that impacts how someone, will respond. And so it's partly also almost educating everyone on how to detect this. And so as long as it's not just evened out, like one person thinks it was bad, one person thinks it was good, so it's indifferent, that
Right.
there's some kind of analysis being done there.
That's right. And I think what you're pointing to is we may have circumstances where you've got 6 annotators watch this video and 4 of them think it's just fine and 2 think it was extremely offensive, right? There's something that's happening that some people aren't picking up on or aren't picking up on in the same way. And those are probably some of the most important things to flag for training, because those are the things where an officer is going to be doing a thing that most of the time works fine and the officer understands as being a very appropriate way to communicate with somebody. But there's some subset of the community to whom this is really not all right. And they kind of need to know, or they not kind of need to know, they need to know that, hey, that's a third rail for some members of your community. And so that's probably almost the most important stuff to train them on, because the stuff that everybody knows is offensive and horrible, they already know not to do. But some of those things where there's disagreement may be the most important things we can bring to Training Bureau.
That would be great. I really appreciate that. And then just in terms of timing, so right now it's still just feeding the information through the annotation. At what point do you anticipate the model actually being able to interpret?
Yeah, so the first stage of these annotations is getting a perfect diarized transcript of who said what when, right? Which is actually very hard. And, and there are already private sector companies who are running models and then writing first draft police reports based on it or those sorts of things. But the quality of what the current cutting edge models are capable of is not as high as it needs to be, especially when people are shouting at each other. And somebody says F you in the middle of a stop, and it's when 4 people are speaking over each other. You really need to know who said that, right? And so that's the first thing we've been working on. We're already training models on the basis of our annotations to get better at that in this domain of traffic stops. We'll be annotating at least probably into February. And but all the way along, as soon as we have some annotations, we're starting to train the models with it. So it's pretty iterative as we go.
Wonderful, thank you. Those are all the questions I had. Any follow-ups?
Actually, if I may, as you were speaking, I thought about a couple of others. One is, and you might have said this, but there was a lot. Are we eventually going to correlate to outcome of the stop?
Yeah, so we have data on, we have the latitude and longitude of each of these stops. We have a lot of pretty fine-grained community data about kind of what's the nature of the community in which this stop occurs. And we have officer perceived and annotator perceived characteristics of the individuals pulled over, and we have some of the personnel data about the officer, and we have the outcome of the stop as well. And so a lot of this is one of I think the things that I've been talking with Commander Sufatelli about from the beginning is how does what happens in the first 30 seconds of a stop shape what happens after? And some of that is this more micro level of kind of escalation and de-escalation, and some of it is, does it end with somebody being pulled out of the car, or somebody being arrested, or something like that, right? So there are kind of a higher level kind of stop outcome type escalations, but there's also a lot of this just what is the tone and tenor of this interaction when somebody's gotten a ticket or not and is driving away.
So we're hoping to find some correlations.
Absolutely.
That then can give us some more insight as to like what we should be doing or not be doing, or, okay. The last question is about language. LA, is a city with multiple languages that are being used. How did you account for that?
So in this first stage of that perfect diarized transcript, some of that is we have multilingual annotators, not across all the languages spoken in LA. And so there are some times when we don't have, essentially for English and Spanish, we have enough depth there's enough of that in our recordings to be able to kind of train models there. And these language models are actually very good at going between languages. That's one thing they are good at. So we're working, there are some cases where people are speaking languages that I don't have an annotator who speaks that, where it's just gonna be like, actually, to us, that is unintelligible. Like, we don't know what was said in that
So your
stop.
29, is it 29,000?
In the 29,000, there will be some where the model's like, we don't know what was said.
And were
right,
those,
for
were
parts
those
of it, but-
randomly selected? So you don't know what you're getting?
That's right. So it's a stratified random sample. So we've got a 12-month window. So we're trying to be, in that sort of, when you have the random sample, then I can make an inference that's what is true in the ones we're
The
looking at is
sample,
true in general
the
of the
universe, yeah.
population on average. So yes, we've got that stratified random sample.
Okay, got it. Okay, very interesting. I feel like I'm in college. Again.
One more question.
Yeah, so as we're talking, I sort of became curious about this part. Will we be tracking? So context or environment outside of the actions of the officer, the actions of the driver, just environment. So even before there's contact, is there already, what does the vehicle look like? What kind of vehicle? What area of the community are they in? Is it 100 degrees? Is it 80 degrees? Like just context in general before even the point of interaction that's being captured and considered and
Yeah.
translated?
So all of our models when we're kind of moving to predicting stop outcome or trying to figure out how what happened in the first 30 seconds shapes the rest, we also have that sort of what neighborhood are you in? Are you in rich neighborhood, poor neighborhood, all the way down to like, is this a Republican leaning voting precinct or a Democratic leaning one? What's the recent crime rate? Is this a night stop? Is this a day stop? We have some stuff on the make and model of the car. We have, is there a lot of traffic going by? We have, is there inclement weather? A lot of those sort of factors are going to be in those predictive models.
And I assume the reason for the stop as well, if it's speeding
Right.
versus running a red light versus something
Yep,
else.
and down to the level of when it is speeding, what, if the officer articulates it, what was the posted speed limit? What was the reported speed limit? You know, so are they going 25 over or 5 over, kind of, when that is present, that we don't always know that, right? Because we only know that if it shows up, if the officer articulates that. But we have what they wrote in their stop report about the reason for the stop, and we have whatever reason they articulated to the driver, we also have. So we'll be working with both of those pieces of information.
Wonderful. Do you teach any classes? Because I can listen to you all day. But thank you both for the great presentation. And anything else to add?
Actually, if I can sort of end on a note, to the extent that other folks from around the department or the board, you know, our team is an open book here in terms of there are a lot of, we're collecting really rich data, and there are a lot of research questions that we can answer with it. And we want to answer the research questions that are most useful to people who are going to be acting on that information. So across the department, if there are folks who are saying, hey, I'd really like to know this, and that goes to community organizations as well. And we're going to be going out and kind of having workshops with community organizations asking for these kind of questions. But you can folks can reach out to me as well and say, hey, I'd really like it if you studied this. We're very open to that, and we have the resources to do it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you both for the presentation. Okay, moving on to regular agenda item 4B, the verbal presentation relative to Hispanic Heritage Month.
Commissioner Shields, if I may, my apologies to the group that's going to be presenting. I have a 12 noon meeting for my day job, so I'm going to step away. But I'm so sorry to miss your presentation. Always excited to hear about what you're doing, and happy Latino Heritage Month. So my apologies again to the group.
Good morning, all, and please introduce yourselves and before beginning the presentation.
Good morning, Commander Hurtado from Professional Standards Bureau and the Department's Hispanic Liaison.
I'm Sergeant Erica Gonzalez. I'm with Foothill Division Patrol Sergeant.
Good morning. I'm Detective Sophie Toledo, and I said good morning. I'm Detective Sophie Toledo, and I'm Chief Choi's aide.
Good morning, Vice President, Commissioners, Chief, Inspector General, for everybody's support to all members of the Los Angeles Police Department. Today, I'd like to discuss two aspects under the lens of Hispanic police officers in LAPD, and what we're doing to demonstrate the department's progressive nature and how Hispanic police officers serve our diverse communities in our city. I also like to demonstrate how La Ley, an affinity group, assists in advancements for our future leaders of the department. And I also wanted to emphasize La Ley's work for every member of the department. Although we do represent one demographic, we're one team and one goal, and that's to serve the city of Los Angeles. LAPD recognizes that Latinos represent 52% of the city's population and also represents 52% of the department. I wanted to highlight some of the hard work that the police officers do every day in order to serve the public. Most divisions hold Spanish academies every year geared to educate the public on victimization, crime prevention, and city department self-help resources and how our communities can protect from within. We focus on problem solving and the root cause of crime, victimization, but we also utilize policing as that framework as we have these meetings. We also provide education on the importance of reporting crimes, calling 911, and using the core system. And I wanted to point out the department went to great lengths to have part of that course system in Spanish for Spanish-speaking communities. LAPD provides education on our immigration policies to ensure our communities understand our posture on immigration, and the department's been doing this since 1979. Some divisions have language cards for indigenous communities, and now including in these educations is the forced labor and identifying and reporting these type of crimes. We also have a close relationship with all the Hispanic consulate offices in the city of Los Angeles. We maintain a liaison between the department and the community. and LAPD is currently accepting DACA recipients. We educate people on the U and the T visas and how to obtain them. We work with other departments on awareness and help educate on LAPD's policies and process directly with the Director of Immigration Affairs. That's from within the Los Angeles Police Department, from LAPD to the community. Now I want to present and give this time to Lale, to my right, so they can highlight some of the important work that they do for the entire department, not just the Hispanic officers.
Yes, we're very inclusive, all inclusive.
So I'm Sophie Toledo, and this is Sergeant Erica Gonzalez. We're both 2 board members out of 10 that are here to represent our Infinity group, the Lillet. We are here to present to you the impactful work that our Infinity group does for not only the community, but our civilian and sworn personnel. So here is Erica that will be presenting.
We'll keep it short. I know you guys, in respect for you guys' time, but we're just going to go over some of the professional development scholarships we do have for our officers, our members, our recruitment and retention efforts working with RED, community engagement events that we do attend, because it's not only about helping our officers, but maintaining that connection with the community and developing that positive relationships and contacts. And we do a lot of those, so we'll go over the most recent ones and how we enhance our department's history awareness. We have some really good news and some exciting things we have planned for the rest of the year, and some of our training and projects that we do have.
So our Infinity group is would like to educate our own personnel, both sworn and civilian, and we encourage and mentor and do one-on-one oral presentations and mock orals for their promotional process. We also offer scholarships to our Lillet members and their family members. We're so very, very happy to offer over $16,000 this one year alone to our Lillet members. And that's...
Yeah, and even that picture, Officer Rodriguez, when that sergeant bibliography first came out, they come to us because that's what we're known for, is mentorship, and I helped him kind of set up his study guide and printing everything out, and he passed the sergeant exam, and we're so proud of him. But we get to see these stories of how we've helped officers who really are kind of lost on how to approach studying, because or how to kind of address that huge bibliography they have to go through. And we do hold seminars for everyone. Like I said, it's not only for Lillet members, but they're department wide, and we try to promote it that way, so anyone who does need that additional help, they can get some information that might help them. Some of the community engagement efforts we do have, we went to the South Traffic Advisory Council Comedy for Car Seats. We helped with that event, VTD Saving Lives Car Show. Again, we do things varying from open community forums that we've done with Expediente Rojo to just going to car shows, just because we want to have that positive connection with the community. We do National Night Out. We take out our Lillet black and white that we do have. Our plate says Lillet on it, and a lot of the community members love putting their little kids. You see the pictures on there. Sergeant Martinez, who's our Sergeant at Arms, is the one who has taken lead on attending many of these events. And again, even Cops for Tots. We have also helped with that, because we do believe in also educating the community when it comes to kid safety with their car seats. And this is the project where I'm really excited about, maybe because I'm such a nerd. But Julio Gonzalez, he's our first Latino officer in the police department's community relations section in 1953. Now, his son, who's pictured to the right, Mr. Gonzalez, sweetest guy you'll ever meet. But he comes over and he says, I want to make sure that my dad's legacy lives on, and that you guys remember for everything that he did. So that's the badges that he donated to us, and he held a picture so proudly of his father's graduating class. And he didn't have children, didn't marry, so he wanted to make sure that everything he did have was maintained and that it was preserved so that other officers can look and see how much we've impacted the department. I mean, for a long time, so in 1953, and I went through some of those certificates, and even back then, there used to be like hand drawn, and they would like, oh, congratulations on your anniversary. Obviously, the department was much smaller back then. We can't be congratulating everyone, all 9,000 or whatever employees we have, with personalized certificates that are hard hand drawn. But they were great. They were well kept, and Mr. Gonzalez will be attending one of our events soon. You guys can talk to him, and he's just so passionate and so proud of his father. And I'm proud to be able to work with him for us to bring that historical awareness to the department and the officers.
So
And-
next Thursday, we are having and hosting an event, and we encourage not only you, board members, but as well as the community to come and join us to represent and start Hispanic Heritage Month. So we welcome all you to attend.
Yes, it'll be great food.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Garcia.
No questions, just thank you for being here and thank you for everything you do. You're definitely appreciated.
All right, thank you. You guys have a great day.
Hey, I'm not done. Have a seat. No, a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. And I'll just have to say that even before I became a commissioner, I was already impressed with Lele's work. When I was on the advisory committee to the police commission, I remember holding, the community input sessions, and one of the presenters was about the survey that Lele, conducted of its members. And that's another great thing that you all do that is so impactful because you have access to so many members that you can really have like a finger on the pulse of what's going on in the department through surveying. And so you really do have an opportunity, and you've done that survey also for the chief of police search and all of these things. So really appreciate you and the other affinity groups that are within the department that really are able to, be at the voice for a larger group to voice any concerns. And so really appreciate what you do. And I've sat through some of the promotional process seminars that you've held, and interview skills and all of the things of just being able to demystify the process so people can understand that they have the ability to promote. And so all of the professional development work that you're doing is fantastic. So really applaud you all and continue to be the force that you are, and really, again, being a resources for all of the members of the department has been really impressive to see. So thank you all for the presentation. And I've attended those festivals in the past, and they are fantastic. And so I do echo your suggestion that people attend from the community as well. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, before we go into closed session, I'll ask the board secretary to elevate President Suthers, if he's on.
He's on. Give it just 1 second. There we go.
Morning. I will be attending closed session remotely for agenda items 5A, B, C, and D. And there is no other person present in the room with me. Thank you.
Thank you, President Suthers. We will now recess into closed session to discuss items 5A through 5D.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss items number 5A, B, C, and D in accordance with Government Code 54957.
Okay, thank you. The commission has returned from closed session, and I'll ask the acting executive director, Mr. Sibley, to please report on items 5A through 5D.
Thank you, Commissioner. Item 5A1, at the regular meeting of the Board of Police Commissioners on September 10th, 2024, during the closed session, the board made the following findings by a 3-0 vote, and this is for case 052-23. For tactics, tactical debrief, 1 police officer, 3. For drawing and exhibition of a firearm, in policy, no further action, 1 police officer, 3. And for lethal use of force, in policy, no further action, 1 police officer, 3. Going on to 5A2, case number 054-23, by a 3-0 vote, the following findings were made. For tactics, tactical debrief, 1 Sergeant 1. For drawing and exhibition of a firearm, in policy, no further action, 1 Sergeant 1. And for lethal use of force, out of policy, administrative disapproval, 1 Sergeant 1. And then to case 5A3, case number 055-23, the Commission made the following findings by a 3-0 vote. For tactics, tactical debrief, 2 police officers, 2. For drawing and exhibition of a firearm, in policy, no further action, 1 police officer, 2. And for lethal use of force, out of policy, administrative disapproval, 1 police officer, 2. And to item 5B, the matter was discussed and adjudicated. For 5C, the matter was discussed. And for 5D, the matter was discussed. And that
Thank-
concludes the report out.
Thank you, Mr. Sibley. I move to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Meeting adjourned.